Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about trusting the machine. And I have a special guest here today with us. It's Karl Koch. I said the last name right. Karl Koch, right?
It's fine by
Koch?
me.
No, Koch.
Koch.
You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's Koch. Goodness gracious. I will get this eventually at some point in the episode. I apologize. Because Karl went over me. He's like, it's Koch. I'm like, okay, I got it. Meanwhile, I'm screwing around with stiff on the back over here. Koch. Because he said Oshkosh, and I remember now. He said Oshkosh, and I remember that part. But Karl, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. So introduce yourself. Tell the viewers at home who you are, what you're about, all that kind of good stuff.
Cool. Well, I'm Karl. I'm a design engineer by trade. I'm the only design engineer at DuckDuckGo, which is, I guess, Google's private search competitor. But we're starting to offer more and more things like browsers. And I've been a design engineer basically all my career, nearly at this point, but just by, I guess, many different titles, without the title. But yeah, it's been a heck of a journey. But finally, I guess I can officially call myself a design engineer. And I guess I've been building for the web for most of my actual professional career, and also dipped and dabbed into Swift UI when it first came out. So I've kind of had a bit of a breadth of experience and had a fun time doing it.
Hell yeah, that's great. Now, with design engineering, I mean, I'm a design engineer, or at least well, it's interesting because I think I talked about this maybe a couple episodes ago. I actually identify myself as a UX engineer as opposed to a design engineer. I think the term design engineer is definitely getting a lot more traction because it encompasses a lot more people at that point. Do you segregate those titles at all, or do you kind of lump them together? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I kind of see it all as one thing. So I was on a panel, a Figma panel, probably like a year ago, talking about this, and that panel was called Creative Technologists or some kind of thing like that. And I've seen throughout the industry, there's like a bunch of titles. UX engineer is the Google title. It seems like that's what they've pushed. Design engineer is what I'm seeing in most of the kind of startup businesses. So like Vercel, Raycast, places like that are talking design engineer. At DuckDuckGo, we call it a design engineer. But it's all the same thing, right? It's just that concept of having this kind of two-brained thinking of design mindset, engineering outcomes. Like it's all the same to me. I don't see the point in segregating it.
Yeah. I do have nuance in for me, and that's the reason why I do it separately, because I specifically, when I talk about UX engineering, I'm talking specifically about the user experience, as opposed to like what I title myself or title design under is a much larger umbrella of possibilities, right? Because you could have visual design, illustrations technically are in there, animations are technically in there, all this stuff that's in design, and absolutely there are design engineers out there that have that gamut of things that they're doing, and I could dabble in some of those things, but I strictly like to focus on UX specifically in my practice. So that's why I title myself UX engineer, but will absolutely lump myself in design engineering because it makes sense, I think.
As a collective, do you kind of find that you sit yourself then in the kind of the very tight gap between design as a process is coming towards the end of its phase maybe, and engineering is about to begin, and you sort of sit in that gap in the middle? Or is it just that you take on challenges that are kind of more focused around experience?
I think it's an experience thing. Yeah, I think it's very much like I think a lot of design engineers do sit in the gap regardless, because those engineers are trying to execute on the designs, or
Yeah.
execute on the visions. But for me, because I'm thinking so specifically about the experience of it all, and less about the craft. I'm going to use the 5 letter word
Hmm.
craft in there. I'm thinking less about the craft, but more about the experience. I think there's a lot of um, expertise that can be in craft, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
That I know that I don't have as much because again, I think I'm being user focused in there. But
Hmm.
but yeah, that's I mean that's we could be talking about design engineering, I'm sure, for quite a bit, and I think this is tangential to the topic we're going to talk about, which is trusting the machine, which is the title we came up with about 5 minutes ago here to really talk about vibe coding because that's a huge thing that's happening in our industry. A lot of different takes about what vibe coding is like all about. What it is, what it's not, what kinds of people are doing it, what people believe um, should be happening, shouldn't be happening. So, what's the first take on this, Carl? What are you thinking?
So I guess the big hot take, the big is it a hot take? The big thing I see is that vibe coding is super powerful,
Yeah.
and like I think for anybody within the industry at this point, if you're within design or within engineering, if you're not vibe coding ideas, you're missing a trick. Like
Hmm.
you're gonna get left behind. I think ultimately. Um, but I think with that comes a huge amount of risk, and that risk is that we start to trust the machine too much.
Yeah.
And if we don't have any fundamental knowledge of how the machine's working, and I don't mean like bits and binary and like, to that extreme, although that's kind of useful and fun to learn about. But like, if we don't have any fundamental understanding of like what HTML is and why that works and why semantic HTML exists or CSS cascades, like why does it cascade in a certain way? Like we're basically just assuming that everybody's GitHub repo that all of this AI stuff's trained on is perfect and that the outcomes will be perfect. And then when it goes wrong, you kind of end up hitting a loop of just like trying to fix it. And you're basically trying to tell the machine how to fix its own problems. And like I've seen it myself where I've vibe coded stuff. And even though I do know what's going on, I get to the point where I start questioning my own knowledge because I'm like in this weird loop with the AI and it's just getting lost and I'm getting lost and we're all just like, wait, what's going on anymore? Like no one knows. And then the whole thing is you just wasted like half an hour and like, I don't know, hundreds of dollars of credits.
Hmm.
So I just think like it's a super powerful thing, but we just need to be careful that we don't end up putting all our trust into it.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I've been well. I'll tell you in my work, which is like my day job, I guess we'll call it. The largest part of the engineering organization is now like highly suggested to use AI tools to get
Mm-hmm.
jobs done around. And then there's been a good push about making tools such that AI can understand the scope and the context of the organization to then move things forward, right? So and it's interesting because I was actually kind of in an argument with the folks that are trying to like manage the documentation site, and they're trying to like force feed this. Oh, we'll use this very specific framework for docs, and I don't know if your docs really should be here. Maybe they should be somewhere else. And I'm looking into these people and I'm going, you folks are like obsolete at this point, right? Right. I'm just looking at these conversations going, I don't need to put this here. I could absolutely put this in, an MD file, host it
Mm-hmm.
for some bots, and no one will visit your doc site again, no matter what kind of content you think is right or wrong or anything in there. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting about the importance of embracing this stuff, where it is absolutely helping the day to day. Because I also, as an anecdote, I'm working on a personal project, and there's parts of that personal project that I'm woefully unfamiliar with. We were talking before the show that I'm not good with databasing or back end at all. So places where I need some help just to get this thing over the line is really helpful. From this standpoint, it's really is like a co-pilot kind of scenario where it's like, hey, this is not my forte. I'm going to give this to my co-pilot for them to kind of figure out. And
Hmm.
you do have to be careful, though, and I think we're going to mention this, is that it's, I think, very important to have at least a gist of what's going on, if not a good understanding of what's going on, especially for folks who are not as well versed in coding as maybe we are, that are trying
Yeah.
to, harness some of this vibe coding. What do you think on that?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I guess as a kind of more concrete example, something that I've seen a lot in projects that I've worked on, if it's web based, is it's very easy. If you go, let's say, open up a blank new project in VS Code or Cursor or whatever you're using, you say to the LLM, like, hey, build me a to-do app, right? A web-based to-do app. I'm really interested in building one. And it will go off and it'll build this thing, and that's great. And then you'll go back and you'll look at the code if you choose to, and it's just div soup.
Hmm.
Like everything is a div everywhere all the time. And like if you've had any experience in the past, like learning true HTML, you understand that like there are semantic meanings behind all of the things in HTML. There's a reason that they exist, and there's a structure to how you use them. And that helps people understand the document, right? It's a document that's read by the web, and that's good for accessibility if you understand proper structure. But it's just good too because it's readable code at that point, right?
Hmm.
Like if you're trying to make sense, just like as if it's a document, reading it by your own eyes, you just see dip 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 dip, dip forever. It's impossible to visualize like what does that mean. Whereas if it's a div that then has like a section, and then you've got a main element, you've got like an aside, you've got all of these things, it helps you to understand mentally what's happening. And what I found I've ended up doing a lot with projects is like if I do kick off something brand new and say just like scaffold me out a starting point here, is I will typically have to then go back through it and be like, oh,
Hmm.
let's change these elements and change the names of all of these things so that we can actually build something that's more semantic. And sometimes you can prompt your way into it by just really like going at the LLM, being like, no, semantic HTML,
Hmm.
think about this.
Hmm.
But again, you're just wasting credits, wasting energy. And I think this will get better, right? Like there's just an inevitable point where this gets better. But at this point in time, I still think there is a huge amount of effort to, first of all, crafting an incredibly good prompt, of course, but also just being very good at curating the work and
Yeah.
being like, this isn't good enough. Let's like address these things and make it better. Because otherwise, what's going to end up happening is everyone's going to be just shipping apps that they have not really read or looked at, and the entire web's just going to become div soup, which it is already anyway, thanks to frameworks like React, like which nothing wrong with React. I use it and I like it, but people have ended up becoming too reliant on just like divving everything, and I worry, and I think we're probably going to hit the point very soon, if we've not already, that like the generation of engineers that are out there that are shipping the most code are the people who probably don't really understand HTML and CSS anymore, because
Right.
they're just so embedded into JSX and that way of thinking. And it's sad, like, it's sad to see it go. I don't know.
I think it's right in some way. I mean, the first thing I'll mention about this is that I think it's very interesting because there's been a lot of talk about adding accessibility into your applications, not specifically because the people need it, but because AI needs it to learn what these things are. That was the
Yeah,
new sell. That was incredible to me. When I
interesting.
learned that, I was like, wait a minute. We didn't give a shit about the people. We give a shit about the AI. so that they can learn
That's so
what's
bad.
going on. So that part is I mean, look, if that's the way we're going to get accessibility to this stuff, then I mean, fine, right? I mean, first it was threatening lawsuits. Now I guess we're going to have to to teach the bots something, which is another thing that's really interesting too, because now we're writing good docs for the AI, not for the
Yeah.
people. It's
Hmm.
incredible. But if that's the way we have to do it, I mean, in some, especially early on with a lot of these things, these AI systems, when you're trying to like generate an app or a product or something like that, they would use Tailwind because the large majority of the internet is using Tailwind because a lot of full
Hmm.
stack people are doing it. CSS, not, ooh, no, not CSS, don't want to use that. Tailwind, so much easier. So because of that, a lot of the stuff would just generate Tailwind as an answer, um, and bec- then that produces more Tailwind and produces more Tailwind and produces more of that, and you have to be conscious, like kind of what we're talking about what the AI is actually doing and say, no, I don't want you to use Tailwind. I want you to do something that I'm more familiar with, which in my case is vanilla CSS. So I
Hmm.
would much rather you write vanilla CSS or CSS modules, close enough, to do these things because then I'll be able to understand what's going on and have a much better mental model because my mental model with Tailwind is non-existent. But when it comes to CSS, absolutely. But the amount of time that I spent being an expert to get to a level where, granted, like I don't know if I'll necessarily be as fast as the AI, but I will have more context, I think, in my mind than the AI will probably ever have, really, about what the expectation is here for this particular part of the project, right? And I guess
Yeah.
when I'm saying context, I don't necessarily mean, okay, I have all the ones and zeros and text that this thing is, but there's a lot of outside stuff that you could really never capture properly, in a couple of sentences prompt or even really a significant prompt. There's going to be stuff that I think you already mentioned, Carl, that you miss and you're just wasting credits on that you could have just handled yourself with a couple of extra lines and been like, okay, get, done, right?
Yeah.
So where is it that people are being a little bit dangerous in all of this, right? Because we kind of mentioned that we're missing some of the stuff about like, okay, we're wasting credits, we're losing some of the knowledge there. What are the other dangers that we're thinking about?
I think the other thing I'm seeing as well is that I was actually watching a video on this earlier today that I, I'm kind of watching this. I guess the AI companies try to figure out, like, kind of to your point, actually, there, like, how do we give context, enough context, but how do we give the context in the best possible way without using up all your credits by putting it all in the context window?
Hmm.
And so we've had like all these ways to try and do that with like rules files, or you have like tool calling, but then like if there's tool calling, it was calling too many tools too often, and so then it's like getting ridiculous in the context. So now we've got skills files, which is
Yes.
like the next thing, and it's like we're basically just trying really, really hard to document how to do things so that it doesn't just keep going off and doing like whatever GitHub does, what everyone on GitHub's done. Um, and like the problem I'm seeing with that is that like we're kind of, I guess, creating a problem for ourselves and then trying to find a new solution to get out of it. But the solution really is just that you need to understand what you're building so that you can instruct the AI better to build that thing. And what it feels like we're trying to do is make a way to create documents that will have like all of our brain's knowledge in them that the AI can just feed from, so it can kind of just sit and in the background and just build stuff, and we don't even have to be involved. Um, I don't know if that's where we're going to go. It feels kind of like that's what we're trying to do, is build like background agents that will just do the work, and then we can kind of sit and just like have a coffee, I guess, for like a few hours. Which is fine in principle, like, and great, we can do less work. But then when the things break, we're left with like, why did it break? Uh, CSS is like a small but simple example. Like the CSS is broken. Okay. Why is it broken? Well, I don't know, because I don't really know how it's built. right? So like now I need to ask the AI, like, well, why is the CSS broken? Well, the AI doesn't know because it broke it. So
Mhm.
now like it needs to go and try and fix itself, but then it's not sure. And then you get in the loop again and you have the
Mhm.
loop problem. So like I think there's a risk that we basically are just trying to like document ourselves into a like out of a job, I guess, or document ourselves out of a need to do any work, which seems good in the short term, but I guess I worry about it in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely align with the worry in the long term because I mean, just talking about again about the push for AI generated work and code, in the day job, and it's just
Yeah.
like, well, if I could just write a prompt and get it done, and especially if all the context is there, all the tools that we made to make sure we're using the right tokens, the right components, all that stuff is already sitting in there, then what is the engineering job? I mean, we're already seeing in the entry level stuff where they're not pulling in the entry level folks any longer because
Hmm.
AI has been taking most of those jobs. So what is the next step for us? And the thing that I mean I think is also kind of important to kind of keep in mind too is that, like, as an example, there are no telephone operators anymore, right? That was a
Hmm.
job,
True.
a serious job, years ago when you had to do dispatching for different phones and things like that. And that job doesn't exist anymore. We've completely used technology to remove it. So is that what's going to eventually happen? Or is there going to be a point? Because you also see lots of news stories about how people, and I should say, really, organizations and companies have invested in AI and haven't seen the return yet, right?
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting kind of dichotomies here about some people on one side of the threshold say, yeah, AI is coming for our jobs and we got to pivot and figure out what to do next. And there's another side that's saying, look, we see the benefits of AI, hypothetically, but we're not seeing the returns yet. And I think the thing that's really interesting to me is that hyper local to the projects at least that I'm working on, especially ones that are time sensitive that I need to like get out the door as like an MVP effectively, it's been really good. But when it comes to a serious user focused product, there is absolutely going to be gaps. And I
Yeah.
think the thing that we need to figure out is how, as a practice, to figure out what those gaps are and figure out how we're supposed to help fill them as a job or a career or a role. What do you think
Yeah.
of that?
I totally agree. Yeah. I think it feels like kind of shifting to a place where like previously we would do every single aspect of the process, right? So like let's say for example, if I was to give a typical project for me, right, I would lead a project, I would design the particular thing, the feature that we're trying to ship. I would then think about how we're going to implement it. I'd sketch a prototype in code, start to like play around with that idea, whether that's in an existing code base or like some new work. Then I would kind of build on that prototype, explore some different ideas, get that prototype to a certain level of fidelity that I'm good with, get it reviewed by stakeholders, approvals, all that sort of stuff, ship it, learn, cycle repeats. Like that's all cool. But that process could be months long, could be weeks long. It depends how big the thing is. What's changed for me now is that like the design has become a much shorter process because I can kind of yeah, I'm talking here as well when I say design I'm talking like the end of the process, so like
Hmm.
actually visualizing the idea. That's become shorter in a sense because I just use it as a very quick scratch pad of like just rough an idea out, give that to the LLM and like get that to scaffold the starting point, and then put that in front of stakeholders, get buy-in. So that whole thing is just narrowed down.
Mm.
But then what that's left me to do is instead of then shipping and being like, well, that whole thing was like great, we did it in 2 days instead of like 4 months. Instead, I've ended up pushing my energy and focus into the kind of between prototype and ship to really get deep on like actually what is the best way that we can do this. So like
Hmm.
AI gives me the start, but AI doesn't give me the end thing that I put in front of somebody ever. Like I will never, for production work, ever put AI's thing 100% in front of a customer. Like it's just not, I just don't trust it enough at this point. And maybe that's me being like precious or naive, or I don't know, but I actually get a lot of joy now in that kind of latter stage of being able to say, like, how can I really think deeply about this? Like, let me really think about the edge cases and test them out in production code. Like, let me really dive into the delight, the little touches that people aren't going to maybe notice or care massively about. But when I experience them, I'm like, that shows that I cared, that I put that bit of polish in, right? For a concrete example, recent project that I just shipped today, actually, introduced images into, for context, at DuckDuckGo, I work on an AI module that we show in search results. It's called Search Assist. It's like Google's AI overviews, but our version of that. And for people, we've started to now introduce imagery in there. So we just show like a little image of the person that we think the query is about. And to do that, we need to show copyright info because the image and the source of the actual text are two different things. So we added this little copyright button on the image. And originally it was just, you clicked it, you just got a little dialogue immediately from the button, click, boom, you see a dialogue and you see the text. Great. And for me, it was like, okay, now that experience is something that most people will never click because most people don't really care. Like we're just doing it for legal reasons. But it felt to me like if I have this like nice window of energy and time on this project that I can leverage. I'm going to use that time to really dial in the experience of how that button click feels. And so I went really hard on morphing and animation. And so we spent a bunch of time just crafting the perfect morph. So when you click that little circle button, it grows into the module with the contents in it. Super pointless, like a really unnecessary detail. But that was a thing that I then, when I shipped it and pressed that final button to say like, this is going to prod 100% of people, I could feel proud of what we shipped. And I guess, that's how things have landed for me. And that's how the whole journey, I guess, has changed, and where vibe coding or like trusting AI has actually become a really powerful tool in my tool belt. But if I'd have just left AI's solution and put that into production, no one would have said anything, genuinely. Like most of the people on my team would be like, great job, that looks cool, we'll just ship it. But what we're able to do is actually just put the energy into like that finer detail. And I know like, okay, what we're shipping here really matters. Like this thing, like if someone does click that button, hopefully they will see that slight animation. They'll feel that I cared enough to encourage us to ship that,
Okay, so I want to unpack a little bit of this because there's a lot in here actually. Because one of the things that you could do here is play a little bit devil's advocate, right?
Yep.
Because the bottom line for the business, that bottom line for the small animation that you added to the copyright does basically nothing for the bottom line, even though they've paid you to do that, right? They've spent money to do something that's not going to affect the business effectively on the short term, right? Like, when someone, I don't care, whatever, right? So the question ends up being, how do you justify this thing that is inherently human, right? Because you just said it right at the end, which is beautiful. The reason we added that animation is because of the feeling, the emotion that a person will have when they do this, right? Yeah. If everything on the web is purely transactional, right, there's no feeling anymore, right? It's just, oh, okay, I did the thing, I'm looking at copyright, boom, copyright's there, okay, move on, right? Yeah. But then you have the feeling, the people, the person that's inside of this application. Because here's the end of the day, right? These businesses are out here to be making money, right? And they want to make money as fast as possible. So in their minds, it makes sense for them to go ahead and just go, okay, AI, boom, get the product out, boom, done, right? And we do see a lot of that. But what we can also be doing is humans are supposed to be using these products on the other end, and we
Yeah.
need to connect with those humans. And I don't think AI is going to be able right now, at least, to connect with the humans, right? To add this little touch of humanity into the experience. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that we, as design engineers, I think, need to sell, that we're putting the humanity into the experience, right? We're putting
Agreed.
in the emotion, the feeling in the experience. And even if you think that's not something that's necessarily affecting the bottom line, it's really the question of, would I rather go to a thing that looks like Craigslist or a thing that looks like Airbnb for, trying to rent out a space, right? So at that answer, you go, oh, clearly Airbnb looks better and then emotes a
Hmm.
feeling of, this trust and that kind of thing. Where if you go to Craigslist, it's just like very transactional, to almost like a brand itself. So um, that's the thing that's really interesting about what you're speaking about, because you spent so much time on this animation, but the business can look at that and go, "What's the fucking point?" Depending on the person, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you have any thoughts about how we could push that narrative more about how we could, I don't know, tell folks that are not in our space in design engineering. And I know you've been working on a site, Design Engineering XYZ, as well. We want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, how we could push this practice of design engineering such that it sells in the right way, especially in the space of AI.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I think one of the things I'm very lucky to have, I guess, from an organizational perspective, is a CEO that cares deeply about experience. So
Yeah.
we have a bunch of values, and we have a bunch of objectives that we're striving towards. Obviously, like all businesses, but one of the things that we are actually, like, as an organization, tasked with caring about is delight.
Awesome.
So, like, that is a key pillar that we are supposed to be putting energy into. So, like, selfishly, from my point of view, like, justifying that window I was talking about is not a hard sell internally, right? For me, I'm able to say this allows us to deliver on the delight. So, like, people won't question that until, obviously, if I'm like, it's going to take me 6 months to craft this perfect experience, and they're like, well, that's ridiculous, it's a copyright button, calm down. um, but I think, like, for people who aren't in that situation, the way that I see it is, like, that attention to detail, that attention and care, and I think you put it incredibly well, and I'm very aligned on this, that we need to be focused on the human at the other side, right? And I think, unfortunately, industry terms around user are a problem in
Mm-hmm.
that, because I think organizationally, the term user creates this feeling of like a statistical number. Whereas I think when we remind ourselves that we're dealing with humans, people, it can kind of help us to maybe reframe the stuff that we're working on, make sure that we're actually putting attention and care into it. Um, but I think in this world of like AI doing that chunk of work at the front that you would have maybe normally spent hours or whatever crafting, um, the thing that allows us to stand out and be differentiated as organizations, as people, as products, is attention to detail, care, craft, and attention on the human at the other side, caring about that person who is going to actually be using the product. Because, like, an AI tool will do an incredibly good job at building something that works most of the time. But just because something works, it doesn't mean that it's good. And it doesn't mean that it's right for the people that need to use it. Um, we talked about it a bit at the beginning around the div soup, HTML accessibility, like that kind of challenge. That's one big bucket that's a problem for, like AI, unfortunately, at this point, is not accessibility first. Like, it does not put all, like, it will if you ask it to, but by default, it's not going to ARIA roll everything that needs ARIA rolls. It's not going to put all of the attention into like reduce motion, that kind of stuff. Like, you can get it there, but you have to know to ask for it.
Right.
And So I think there is a really big key space for us to kind of push this narrative around design engineers who sit at that interval between design and engineering are kind of uniquely tuned to care about the end human behind the product and to really think about those details that make the experience from the design intent to the engineering outcome be like the best possible thing that we can ship.
Yeah, I just thought of something while you're speaking there about this phrase called "done is better than perfect,"
Mm.
right? And I think now with AI, we're getting things done,
Yeah.
but that's giving us the runway to actually make it perfect. And perfect's not perfect in terms of what we're thinking about. Okay, it's infallible or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think what the adage is helping us here doing is that, okay, usually what we do is we think about this in terms of time, right? We're going to spend all this time or resource. Actually, let's talk about resource even more generally. We spend all
Mm.
these resources to get to a final thing, right? And in order for us to get to the thing, we need it to be done, whatever that means, right? Well, now what AI has been doing is saying, okay, the resources we're going to use, we're going to now make it done really fast. And the amount of resources it took is reduced. So now we could use the same amount of time that we would normally have to actually making it perfect. And
Mm.
again, perfect doesn't necessarily mean perfect here. I think it's really what we're talking about in terms of our description of the human part. It's making it so that it's perfect for a human, or it's something related to human. I don't know what the connection is necessarily yet between the word perfect and human in what we're talking about here, but I think that's the done is better than perfect. We're now done with done. Like
Mm.
that's baseline now with AI because it's making things done. What we need to do is actually effectively make it perfect. That's what the runway
Yeah.
is giving for us at this point. Um, I tried to queue you up for design engineering. I want you to plug this thing
Sure.
for design engineers out there and people who are interested in the field. So go ahead, give us a little bit of what's happening here. I know we still have more time to talk about stuff, but
Yeah, of course.
I'm trying to key you up on this thing over here because I really like
I'm
what you're doing.
sorry. I'm terrible at
That's okay.
I'm
Go
terrible
ahead.
at self-promoting things. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I guess because of all of this, it started actually 2023, end of 23. I set the site up, designengineering.xyz, or XYZ if you're American, and it came out off the back of the Figma talk actually that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and initially I just like bought the domain because I was like, there's something here happening. Like I was seeing talk about design engineering as a practice, but it was still quite quiet then. And I was like, something's happening. I'm going to buy the domain and just like figure something out. And I kind of sat on it pretty badly. Like we put like a holding page up. There was like a bit of content. A friend of mine and I did some interviews with a few people, but then we sort of fizzled out because the energy was like it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like you do this as well, like getting people and then videoing them and then like dealing with. We were trying to do it with edits and stuff. It just got too complicated. So I left it alone for almost 2 years, and then I'd kind of seen that everything had kept shifting and shifting and shifting. AI shifted and became way more common in the workspace. And then I was witnessing all the stuff that we've been talking about. So I was seeing code people were shipping that isn't good. And I was seeing like conversations online. One of my favorite examples was there was a guy who got AI to vibe code him a SaaS app, classic thing of like, I just want to make MRR and put like a figure on my Twitter bio that says how much I'm making a month. So he built this SaaS app with AI, and the SaaS app that the AI built at this point put the keys to the OpenAI key he needed in the front end, right? He had no idea what that meant. So for him, he's like, oh, it works. Sweet. Shipped it. What happens? Of course, Twitter happens, or X, Twitter happens, and people get hold of the URL, spam it massively, and it cost him $10,000. And he didn't have $10,000, right? And so it was like super big lesson learned, right? Like that is one of those things where that lack of understanding, lack of knowledge leads to bad outcomes. Things like that get better now. Like AI tools don't ship the API keys in the front end most of the time now. You're pretty good there. But they still ship stuff that's not good enough. So I guess I've been like mulling it over for ages. I've been trying to evolve the site, add some more useful things. Like I've built a bunch of tools that I thought were useful, like easing generators and like token generators, color pickers, things. Like there's like a bunch of stuff on there. But it felt like the best thing I could do was try and build a course. But then the idea of a course made me sweat quite considerably. But I've basically just been plugging away at it for months, just trying to figure out like what is everything that I know that I think is useful, and how can I put it in front of people in a way that I think is going to help them learn it without overloading them, and without it feeling like a kind of passive read and learn course. One of the big things that I've witnessed from taking courses myself actually is that very many of them are video driven, and it feels really cool at the time when you're like, oh, I've got a video course, wicked, gonna start. You put on the video and you're like, I'm listening, I'm learning. And then you get to video number 2, you're like, yep, I'm definitely learning stuff here. But the reality is you're actually not. And I did a bunch of research, not my own, it's a secondary research, but I looked at a bunch of papers actually on people's attention and how people learn. And it turns out that video-based learning just isn't effective. Like, it's to a degree, like, but I mean, we've all taken like IT training, you're not listening to it, are you? You're just skipping through it until you can get to the end, right?
Right.
And if you're smart enough, you can get the Atlas browser to do it for you.
Ooh, did not know that.
Yeah. Don't do that. It's bad. But yeah, so basically, yeah, I took a lot of time and thought to myself, like, I'd love to do video because it feels like cool and you can make it all polished. But in the end, I decided the best thing to do was to write a text-based course. So it's pretty huge. It's 230 odd courses if you do the whole thing. But each lesson is relatively compact. So it's lots of lessons, but not like lots of content in each lesson. It tries to keep it relatively simple. But it goes from complete novice all the way through to being able to create some projects for yourself that you can ship. And the idea is that there are 3 tracks. So you've got the design track, which is for people who are of the more engineering persuasion, who are looking to become better at design fundamentals. So understanding things like typography, hierarchy, color, like principles like the Gestalt principle and like other kind of important practices that allow us to create good design. So you can go from engineering and take the design track and get to a point where your engineering knowledge benefits you. You get this new design knowledge and you can kind of meet yourself in the middle as a bit more of a design engineer. You can do the engineering track, which is the opposite. So you're a designer who wants to get good at coding, same thing. And then there's a track called convergence, which is basically all of it. So if you take the convergence track, you get access to both, which, even if you're great at design, it's always useful to kind of go back over things, get some fundamental knowledge back. But the ability there is, I guess, that you kind of get everything. And the main tracks are web. That's where I've got the most content, just because web is always going to be bigger. There's a lot more to care about. But there are tracks for iOS and Android in both camps. So iOS and Android design and iOS and Android engineering. So it's pretty massive, pretty full-fledged. And yeah, I've built the whole course thing myself because I'm a complete nightmare of a human. Built my own. Yeah, we talked about it a bit before the show, but like I decided to build my own course platform just because like I wanted full ownership of the content basically, and I didn't want to be giving away like how my course can be built, how it can run, who owns what. Like it just means that I have full ownership of the content, but also the platform and the experience. So once I've run through some people on the course, if it's not good enough, because I don't really know until I put it out there. Like if people feel like it's missing stuff, not hitting the mark in certain ways, like I've got the opportunity then to evolve it and improve it because it's under my control. Um, so yeah, it's exciting, but I'm terrified. I need to release it at the end of this month because that's what I set. That's my goal, but I'm scared to push the button.
Are you close, or is it ready, or are you just scared to hit the button? Is that basically it?
It's ready. I'm just scared to press the button.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it about the button that you're scared of?
I think it's just taking people's money for something that I put time into that maybe like I do freelance work. I'm happy to take people's money from giving them a design or building a site or doing some stuff. That's fine. But when it comes to teaching, like it's something that I care deeply about, and I want to do it in the right way, and I want to be sure that what I'm teaching is good and that people are going to get value from it. And obviously I'll refund people within 2 weeks if they're not happy. I'm not going to be mean about it, but I guess I worry because I've seen people in the past as well who take courses thinking that that's going to make them into a role, right? It's like, people spend lots of money because it's like, oh, it's a course about design engineering. Like if I take the course and like I try and apply for a design engineering job, I can get the job now because I've got this course that says that and I don't want people thinking that. So, that's in the FAQs, but I'm just saying it here now as well, that like the course will teach you a bunch of stuff. It's useful, but it doesn't make you a design engineer. It just gives you the fundamentals that you need to be able to hopefully pivot your career. Because I think for most people with design engineering, it's going to be about pivoting from where you are into that role versus coming from like university and just starting as a design engineer. I think that will happen. But I think for most people at the moment, still, it's going to be trying to pivot or being able to do what I did, which is like influence internally to develop the role and actually have that role become a thing that can exist.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things is actually the role of design engineering, and that's something I had a blog post about, which is on Design Engineering XYZ. Actually, it's UX engineering as UX engineer terminal career. It's called.
That's it.
Which I wrote a few years ago because of my history with design engineering or UX engineering as I was, and it's getting better in terms of the roles being there and really the career ladders being there because sure, it's very easy to be a one single person design engineer. It's actually pretty common for that to happen because lots of organizations realize that a liaison between design and engineering is actually very helpful, and usually they'll sit in the design system space. But one of the other things that I think is important too is that, just like you said, I don't think this course or really any course about design engineering could really prepare you for the role of design engineering other than having the experience in or around it, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a point where you can capture all that you can capture in terms of whatever material is out there, but until you are walking the walk at the the smallest footsteps, you can't really capture the role, especially since again, there's not a lot of roles when it comes to this stuff, right? There's definitely product design roles. There's definitely engineering roles that are out there. You can grab one of those, and sometimes you can get yourself, wedge yourself in between. Sometimes, right? And that again only happens again if you have the right mix of people and politics for this to work. Or again, if you already have an existing design engineering track at your place. Speaking of design engineering, just for the folks at home, 2 days from now, on the Thursday, the 20, what is it, the 22nd, right?
22nd,
tomorrow?
Yeah.
There is a design engineering meetup in New York City. There is 200 people registered for this thing. So we exist. We're out there, right? If you are in New York City, you're hearing this now because this is live. So you maybe you're hearing it or watching it now. Register for it. I've been posting about it. If you're in the New York area, I'll be speaking actually at the event. I'll be talking about topography. That's at least the plan. Not design tokens, amazingly enough, because I know people know me about design tokens. I've had enough. No more design tokens. I've had enough. But yeah, if you're in the neighborhood for in New York City for Thursday, absolutely show up for design engineering to just be a part of of this practice. There are more
Hmm.
people. I think there was an interview at on Dive Club with Mike Ruttering about I think the somebody at Vercel talking about how design engineering is a fad, and I was like, hold on a second,
Oh
wait a
yeah,
minute, what are you doing to my? And it was interesting because it was absolutely clickbait. He did such a great job doing that.
yeah,
The thing he was talking about, which is again, it dovetails to the AI thing, is that everyone is turning into the other thing. Now engineers can design a little bit because they're able to, prompt and say, hey, make me this thing that's going to be okay, and it's going to
yeah,
put Radix or Shadsi in it, and it'll be fine. It'll work. It'll be okay. It'll look like an app. And then you have designers that are going in and saying, "Oh, I, can't wire up a database, or I'm not good with CSS or whatever. Make me an app that does the thing," and it does it right with certain limitations like APIs keeps coming around. So what he was talking about a few years ago is certainly coming true a little bit where
hmm
the roles are blending, but in terms of the actual, I think what we were talking about earlier, the human aspect of it, because again, we're talking about okay, the done is there. The designer can make a oh god, a app done. They could do that, but
yeah.
can they make it perfect? Not unless you go through Carl's course. You have to go through Carl's course.
That's the answer.
You have to go. No, but no, you have to. You're going to have to put more effort into the practice in order
Yeah,
to actually get it to the perfect stage. But I think AI is helping to get us get the industry all on the same level in certain ways to
yeah,
make products and iterate and try new things and things that you couldn't do before. I mean, talking about you building the your course platform, I'm building the platform for my event, and I'm mostly vibe coding that as well because it's places things that I'm unfamiliar with, right? Like, sure, the front end that's easy for me. I can knock that out in a few days. But when it comes to processing registrations and making sure people are in the right ticket type and making sure that the answers from one part of the slide go to the next part of the slide, like all that stuff
hmm
that I've never done before, is really helpful to have a co-pilot that's like, hey, let me help you along and do this thing.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think plugging the course. Absolutely, take a look at the course once Carl decides to hit the button. um, and because I imagine with the work that I've seen Carl do on the internet, and he's going to tell you all about where you can find him in a minute. The work that I've seen Carl do on the internet in terms of the things that he shared, he obviously is passionate about this kind of work, and to have someone who's passionate, who's willing to share this stuff, I think is very worthwhile if you have the cycles to do so. So anyway, speaking of where people can find the internet,
Mm.
what tell us where are you?
I'm not in that many places anymore, but the best place. I'm not one of those like Twitter guys that shares loads of things all the time. Like which is what everyone thought design engineering was, just like animations on Twitter. But no, you can find me on karlkoch.me. So my full name.me. That's my kind of main website place that you can kind of see some of the stuff that I've done, like all the apps that I've built, sites that I've built, font that I made.
Font. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I made a custom font, but it's just for me. So
that's all it
very
needs to be.
sneaky. Keep it to myself.
Okay.
But my site's coded in it. You can see it on my personal site. And then you'll find a link to design engineering directly on there. But otherwise, it's designengineer.xyz or
Very good.
Z.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Super. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to make sure we cover here. I think we're good, right? I think we did pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Buy my course.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Buy Carl's course. Absolutely. You better do that right now. Otherwise, we're going to be mad at you. But
Well,
anyway,
actually,
thank you, Carl.
one final thing
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
that you can do is because the button hasn't been pushed yet. There is a little box to put your email address in just to get notified when it does go live.
Hell yeah.
So if you are interested, please do it, because it just helps me to at least, I'm not going to spam people, but it's going to help me to at least have an idea of how many people are interested, so I can start to quell my expectations.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a really good point on that. I mean, I do the same thing actually for my book, where there's pre-registered emails, just so I have an idea of like, okay, what am I expecting in terms of interest? So that's a really good thing to have. So yeah, absolutely go to designengineering.xyz. Engineering or is engineer?
Engineer.
Engineer. Yeah. Designengineer.xyz or XYZ. And make sure you enter your email address to let Karl know about your interest in his course. Karl, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. And about vibe coding, and obviously about design engineering, something that obviously we're doing on a regular basis. And let me just sign off for the people over here at home. Thank you so much for joining me today, and with Karl, of course. Before you go, help the show out by smashing the like and subscribe button to get notified, of course, when we get live. And of course, don't forget that you can join and continue the conversation. Oop, that's the wrong button. On the official Design Systems Discord house. Design Systems Discord at discord.ds.house. There'll be a point where I do this outro flawlessly, but it is not happening yet. I have a paper that I could read from too, but I'm just not doing it. It's awful. It's awful. Anyway, please just go to discord.ds.house. Join the conversation over there. We'll be posting this video. It's probably already been posted right now because it automatically goes live. It'll be wonderful. But anyway, play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.